Today, Armenians worldwide, and particularly in the diaspora, commemorate the 105th anniversary of the Armenian Genocide. Welcome to Arm Wrestling with COVID-19 in London. This is my number 14. Now, having heard my introduction, you might be justified to say, hey, has Harry gone bonkers? He creates a channel that is specifically focused on the new coronavirus pandemic. And here he is doing an introduction and bringing into the discussion, into the reflection, the historical reality of a genocide that took place well over a century ago. Why? Well, Harry hasn't gone bonkers, at least he doesn't think he has, and I believe there is a method to my madness. The reason I'm linking the 105th anniversary of this horrible chapter in the history of Armenians worldwide, as well as Syriacs, Chaldeans, and Pontic Greeks during World War I in 1915, and my channel is because the lockdown, the COVID-19 pandemic has wrought havoc with the normal activities undertaken by the Armenian community in London principally on this day, the 24th of April, which happens to be a Friday this year in 2020. Now, there are roughly about 15 to 20,000 Armenians living across the UK, a small number who've come here in waves, started in the late 1800s in Manchester, and then after the Lebanese Civil War, the Iranian Revolution, the Iraqi War, and every kind of incident, more and more Armenians left different parts of the world and came to the UK, and the latest wave are Armenians coming from the South Caucasus and from Armenia itself. And those 15, 20,000 people every year come together in order to undertake a number of activities to remember the deaths of their ancestors, their forefathers. In the past, for instance, there have been huge marches that have started at Marble Arch and went all the way to the cenotaph, where a wreath or a number of wreaths were laid by the church and secular representatives of different Armenian organizations. There have been also vigils, there have been activities, events, public events that this year, because of the lockdown, is not happening. And the question that I would ask myself is, does this mean that there is no commemoration this year? There is no remembrance? There is no memory of what happened to well over 1 million Armenians? Some historians put the number at 1.5 million, but for me, 1 million is 1 million too many. The significance of the anniversary remains valid no matter what the activities are. No matter whether Armenians walk to the cenotaph, no matter whether the bishop or the representatives of the Armenian organizations lay their wreaths at the cenotaph, say a prayer or a statement or reflection, go and knock at the door of 10 Downing Street to give the Prime Minister of the day a letter asking for recognition of the Armenian genocide by the UK, which incidentally, sadly, the UK hasn't done, unlike many other EU and Middle Eastern and other countries. They also go and do vigils, they do events. All this has stopped. But there are also other Armenians, particularly this year, who sit in their homes, who read, who write, who contemplate, who talk to friends. A memory cannot be expunged. A memory cannot be erased. A memory cannot literally be forgotten just because you're not walking. And that memory is at the heart of what defines a diasporan Armenian in most countries. And this year, unfortunately, because of the coronavirus, because of the lockdown, because of the rules and guidance of PHE, Many of those activities have been translated, transformed into virtual or digital activities. So you have virtual marches, you have web seminars discussing the genocide, you have virtual memorial services. All this is happening. But in addition to that, there is the lingering memory of what happened 105 years ago. And I would like to connect this with lockdown, with the COVID-19 pandemic in a sense. But how? I mean, they're two entirely different subjects. And I'm not going into the core of a virus versus a historical atrocity that took place during Ottoman Turkish times. What I would like to say is that as I've observed over the years the various atrocities and genocides that have taken place across our own global village, I've come to the conclusion that there are two things that I cling to, partly to preserve my sanity and partly to actually give meaning, sense to my life. The first is never abandon hope. Whether it's a dreadful virus, whether it is a horrible atrocity perpetrated by human beings against other human beings, don't give up hope. Hope makes us what we are. And with hope comes another reality, which is celebration of life. To mourn our deaths, no matter who they are and of what nationality, ethnic identity, etc., to mourn our deaths is necessary. But what is equally necessary is to celebrate life, because you can only validate those lives that have been lost by celebrating the life that you have today. So no matter what Armenians are doing today, virtual marches, virtual meetings, virtual memorial services, articles, what have you, I've contributed a little bit to it on an individual basis as well. All this funnels into one reality. Yes, there was a genocide. Yes, we are living, the whole world is living in a frightening, scary, shambolic reality called COVID-19. And yes, there is life after death, and there is always hope, that path that leads us to light. So I hope I managed to convey to you a little bit what makes an Armenian tick today, but more importantly, what makes an Armenian in a far, far larger humanity aspire and yearn for hope and for life.